Welcome to episode 106 of the Necronama.com. I am James Sabata, horror author, screenwriter, co-host of the podcast you're listening to right now, and I feel like Doug Bradley needs to get a new acupuncture therapist.
And I'm Don Guillory, author, historian, educator, co-host of this podcast, and this movie just reminded me that why I don't like Rubik's Cubes, because I feel like if you solve them, something bad is going to happen.
I've been solving Rubik's Cubes throughout all of COVID, and nothing bad has happened to the world at all.
I blame you.
That's actually true. I have been, but, I don't think that I'm responsible. I'm not that important. But you know who is important? Our guest today. Hailey Piper is back.
Welcome.
Hello.
We're excited to have you back. You did the Wicker Man episode, which I just absolutely adore. And now we're here for HELLRAISER. But first, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and the book coming out and any other big news you might have.
Sure. I'm Hailey Piper. I'm a horror author. I am the author of The Worm and His Kings, Benny Rose the Cannibal King, The Possession of Ned Glasgow, and Unfortunate Elements of My Anatomy. My first short story collection will be coming out from the Seventh Terrace. It tells 18 stories of queer horror, isolation, and the monstrous feminine, with the ending with a new novelette, my first novelette in a couple of years. Yeah, I guess that's it. And one of my short stories is being adapted into a movie, or part of a movie.
Awesome.
Worst Laid Plans will be coming out from Genre Blast Films probably next year. They're still casting and scouting locations and stuff, but it'll be an anthology film, and my story Unkindly Girls from the anthology of the same name will be one of the segments.
That's really big news, and I'm super excited about this project. I backed the Kickstarter, so did Don. We can't wait for it to happen, and with your level of writing, we're super excited about it.
Thank you.
So let's jump into the film, shall we? What is it about HELLRAISER that made it the movie you wanted to pick for this episode?
This movie, I also saw this, I saw this much younger than I should have. Mm-hmm. And so there's some parts of it that I'm like, how much of this has, I know it influenced me, but I don't know how much of it is not as jarring to me as it should be, because right. I saw it so young and ingested it so young. And I'm sure there were no problems later involved in that or anything. I didn't know at the time that, Clive Barker's gay, and I couldn't read these kinds of things from that, with that context, from that angle, but I see things differently, and I'm just like, different perspectives are going to tell different kinds of stories and in different ways. So it mattered to me a lot that these ideas of, how different interactions and stuff, or this concepts of that our reality being paper thin, mm-hmm. were huge for me when I was younger. So this was this was a big turning point in my young imagination.
I love that.
He paved the way for people like me to just throw rainbow flags on either side of my display name on Twitter and to just be like, yeah, make horror gay as fuck. Because he wrote things that, he helped blaze the trail. I mean, there's long history going back decades, but, he's pretty recent, and it matters.
Absolutely.
I couldn't do the stuff I do the way I do had he not been there first, I guess is the way I want to put it.
Yeah, because with a lot of the stories themselves, if they're so abstract or so removed from you, I mean, it's hard to make that connection. And I think at least from anyone in a marginalized community being able to tell your story, and especially when someone finds out or discovers or you come out as far as what background you are, that's definitely going to have an influence on the next generation and subsequent generations to feel comfortable, because there are a lot of stories that some of us don't want to talk about, because of how it may be perceived or how society is going to shut you up when you try and tell those stories, whether that has to
Right.
deal with sexuality, has to deal with gender identity, race, nationality.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I'm glad I'm living in this moment to where I can see a lot more people from different backgrounds having their stories told, whether that's in horror, whether that's in action, the comic books, whatever, or just, regular daytime TV or primetime television, for people to actually see people on television that look like them and look like the communities that they're in, as opposed to the repeated nonsensical cookie cutter families that you got in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Well, I should say the 70s started to break out of that. But in the 50s and 60s, where you got those cookie cutter families where it was, a mom and a dad, 2 kids and a dog, maybe 3 kids. But, you couldn't have a single mother. Or, I mean, if you had them, they were very rare. Couldn't have single mothers, or you couldn't have, people getting divorced until you had shows that, it was that right time was hit. But it's good to be in this moment to where we are seeing horror being more inclusive and more expressive.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Do you guys think that horror is hitting it harder than other genres? Like, that's how I feel, but I also don't feel like I spend enough time in other genres to know. So, like, maybe I'm just looking at the mainstream shit from that, but like, I feel like horror has really dedicated to representation and voices and that sort of thing. Do you guys feel that way as well, or?
I mean, I do, honestly, because I know people who are more into, like, for example, SFF or romance and definitely crime. And they've got a lot more unpacking to do, it feels like, than horror does. Like, there's, not to get off on like total tangents, but the shit that seems to go on annually with the Hugos, the Hugo Awards, things going on with, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Butchercon. Like, you don't hear crap like this happening with, like, for example, the Stokers. And I think because horror, as by its nature, tends to be more boundary pushing, like things that aren't really actually a problem, like, different demographics and stuff, can get away with being present, because even the people who have an issue with it might just look at, oh, well, it's horror, it can do anything. Whereas with, a lot of science fiction stuff, a lot of fantasy stuff, definitely romance stuff, there are more rules you have to follow.
Right.
And when you start to violate those rules because you don't come from, certain nationality or, certain backgrounds or whatever, it's not taken to as well. And there's definitely an audience of horror that's not good with that, but I feel like it's much smaller comparatively.
I feel like the other ones are catching up, because as you pose that question, James, the only genre I could feel is catching up, and before any of the members of that fandom jump on me for this, I want to explain. Comic books themselves have always been about social commentary. However, their adaptations towards films haven't always, or even television shows for themselves, haven't really gotten deep. I would say within the last 5 to 10 years, with, especially within the world of Marvel and Star Wars and things like that, they've been a lot more open, as opposed to the implied commentary that might be there, or you could argue this represents a metaphor for, X represents for Y. But I would say the way that this expansion has taken place in things like Marvel, they have really been going deep into social commentary and representation with respect to race, sexuality, gender identity, and hitting it out of the park. Especially, I guess it's been a week since, or by the time this comes out, it'll be longer. But even with the Falcon, when he became Captain America in the comic books, there was this huge backlash of Captain America can't be black. And so when they covered it on the television show or the television series, they got into that same thing of, why shouldn't I be? And there's this nice speech that Anthony Mackie's character gives that talks about the complexity of being a minority and then also wearing the stars and stripes and what that represents. And the same thing is going to happen when Thor is, or I should say, the Mjolnir is being wielded by a woman. It's going to be that same thing of, these heroes, or the heroes that we see, and superheroes themselves, or just heroes in film, no matter what, whether we're talking about horror as well, don't have to be white male protagonists, or even the final girl, as far as being, that stereotypical or generalized, blonde white woman that has to go through all this stuff and eventually succeed. You're going to start seeing, as we've seen with Jordan Peele, as we've seen with other films in more recent years and television series, you're going to see a lot more people from different backgrounds and different identities that can be the hero, and for that matter, should be the hero, because in real life, we've got a lot of heroes that aren't white males or white females, or I should say straight white male Christian heroes. You've got them from different backgrounds. So I think here horror is leading the charge with having these discussions, and everyone else is starting to catch up. And my fear is, as those other ones catch up, the focus is going to be on how well they did it, as opposed to how well horror has been doing it for a while.
I think you're right.
I have one follow-up on that before we move on. Sorry, Hailey.
You're fine.
Are they as good behind the camera, filling in these representative voices? They've
gotten a lot better. I would say, especially with the films that are coming out now, and the way that Disney is pushing things, they could be better, but they're a lot better than what they were. So as far as people that are writing, people who are involved as far as the cinematography, and the director who won this past Oscars for Nomadland is actually directing. Actually, she already directed it. One of the Marvel films, and that entire cast is ridiculously diverse, and they've made it a point to make sure that people that are working the production crew are diverse as well.
Cool.
And not in the sense of we're going to check off all these blocks. It's going to be, hey, we're not only going to have people, but we're going to make sure that there's a sense of a mentoring situation here. So we start building these networks, because we recognize that we were cutting a lot of people out. And there's a lot to say with that, the internship process and the universities that people are able to go to and afford. But they're making an effort to do better.
Very cool. All right, let's jump into this film, since some people are still listening. No. Yeah. So Hailey, you're the guest. I'm gonna let you start it out. You can start at the beginning if you want, or wherever you want to go. Take me through Hellraiser.
We'll start at the beginning of the movie, which, it's the first thing you see is the most important thing, probably, is the lament configuration, the horrible puzzle box. I should warn up front, my interpretation of events of this movie might be a little different than a lot of people's. We'll get to that as we get to certain points where it probably deviates, but I just wanted to put that out there at the start.
I'm ready for that. Anything that makes me think differently is great. So
and I could be wrong. I could be like, oh, everybody thinks this way, but I'm just like, just because of the way certain things are presented, and I'm just like, well, could you look at it this way? So yeah.
I was hiding my eyes the entire time, so I didn't see any of it. So
you didn't listen to Pinhead. We have such sights to show you. Or you did listen to Pinhead. This is not for your eyes.
That's hilarious. No, the opening between the box and then, Frank's death, just fantastic. This is a great opening.
Oh yeah. It gets to the blood right away. If that's what you're there for. So the funny thing is, I've watched this many, 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 many times, and somehow I don't know if most of the times I watched it was on Sci-Fi Channel and they cut a couple things, but I didn't remember the Cenobites being there at the beginning for some reason.
Interesting. Huh.
Yeah, and again, I've watched this a couple times on DVD or streaming, and like 30 times or 50 times on TV. So that's going to be the version that's usually stuck in my memory.
I mean, that's kind of interesting in itself because TV always cuts stuff. So yeah, go with it.
And with this movie in particular, they kind of
I'm surprised they showed anything. It's just Kirsty running. No.
Yeah, I mean, the Cenobites come, because Frank, solves the lament configuration and calls them, and they give him what he asked for, just not what he expected.
Right.
He and he explains it later, but what does he say? He thought he'd reached the limits of things.
Right. It was like the pleasures of heaven and hell or something.
Yeah. And it's just like, I mean, I don't know what he was expecting. It's like, oh, please, not the chains, cosmic leather daddy. But
I need that on a shirt now.
Damn it. I was thinking, like, that would go great on some merch.
But
I hope this guy doesn't come and follow me.
Yeah, but then they tear him to pieces. So I hope it was good for him.
Well,
like I said, I watched this movie when I was way too young, and it definitely tainted me in some ways. But so I just my wife has watched this with me once before, and she's very patiently watched it with me again, sort of. Like, I think it was too much this time, and I'm just sitting there like, I'm not writing as smart of notes as I did for The Wicker Man. I'm just like writing I'm writing something that happens and then just like love it afterward.
We'll take it. It's too late. They're already listening, so it doesn't matter now. No.
My plan was to live tweet it while I was watching, and I wrote down, those are some nasty fingernails.
Yes, I watched and I was like, why, Frank, why? And they were evenly nasty. Like, it wasn't like any of them were cleaner or dirtier than the other. They were just like, I don't know. I guess he got new fingernails later, at least.
Some studio exec wanted to show that Frank's a dirty boy, and that's the only way they could figure it out how to do it.
Well,
not from all the flashbacks or him approaching his knees.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
He's a douchebag all around. Come on, guys. But not that opening scene when they're at the bazaar in Morocco.
I love that.
It just, it makes me miss traveling, which is something that COVID has taken away from us. Or excuse me, people who have not paid attention to COVID protocols and adhere to them. But just the way the bazaar was operating, and the idea that however much money was in that first stack wasn't enough, which I'm like, okay, well, it's a stack of 50s. Okay, so maybe it's $5,000. Maybe he's got 100, 50s, and it's $5,000 that's in there. All right, then that's not enough. So all right, here's a stack of $10,000. So I'm going to give you $15,000 altogether. And the bazaar salesman, or the guy that he meets, and they're having tea together, makes that comment. He's like, "Oh, sold." It's like, and when he walks away, it's like, "Oh, the box has always been yours." And I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, that's kind of the thing a guy would say after somebody has left, as opposed to, yeah, you want to make sure you say that way after he's giving you the money, as opposed to before. Right? But even then, that struck me as, all right, this box itself is attached to this guy from the beginning. Fate has sealed it for him. He's got to have it, and it's going to determine, his downfall or wherever this story may be going. So I thought that was a cute touch, but it was also one of those things where I was sitting there thinking, I would love to be the guy that's at the table next to you and like, damn, dude, you got $15,000 out of him just for that? Way to go.
He'd feel pretty stupid if he took the first bundle of cash and then Frank had to carry the second bundle around, right?
Yeah.
I mean, considering who, what we learn about the merchant character, over the course of the movie, he seems to know where the box is going to be before it's there. There's no other reason for him to be watching Kirsty when he's, disguised as the homeless man, without knowing it's going to show up with her. I don't know when, but it's going to show up with her at some point soon. But so I mean, there might have been, I don't know if people get this aura about them that tells him so he knew Frank was going to get it. I don't know. I mean, there's no reason not to get $15,000 out of Frank. It's not like it was probably his money in the first place.
That's what I was wondering. I was like, where did Frank get this cash? Because he doesn't seem like he lives a life where he would have this much laying around.
I'm sure he stole it or did something for it. I mean, they paint a pretty clear picture of Frank throughout the movie.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's definitely a scumbag.
which is interesting because, when Larry and Julia get to the house, a couple scenes later, there's so many religious effigies all over the place. Some of them are obviously kind of blasphemous, like the one where I think Jesus is holding out a plate with somebody's head on it.
Right.
Other ones are pretty standard, honestly. Aside from having the giant spring-loaded Jesus in the closet near the end, but there's just tons of Virgin Mary statues. And I'm just I'm curious if Frank was pursuing something else before he found out about the lament configuration, or if this was supposed to, I don't know, protect him because he thought it was hell that he was bringing there. And that's where I diverge with a lot of people because it's called HELLRAISER and the book is called The Hellbound Heart. And, but if you ignore the sequels, which I do, there's nothing about the Cenobites themselves that necessitates anything regarding Christian religion. So all of the religious stuff in the movie, it's all Frank. All of the religion comes from Frank, which is so drastically opposed to everything else we know about his character.
Huh. I guess I just assumed that all of the Jesus memorabilia was from a family member that owned the house before them, and it just stayed there. But
I mean, it's possible. It's their parents' house, but
I was so confused because, like you said, there's normal Jesus stuff, and then there's really weird Jesus stuff, and I was like, what are you going for here? Is it just oh, it's Jesus, we're done? We don't care what it looks like? None of it made sense together. And I know that's probably part of the point, but I found myself really stuck there, analyzing that stuff. And I couldn't get past it. And then I will say the spring-loaded Jesus scared the living shit out of me. But I'm scared of Jesus normally, so that's not really that odd.
Yeah, for me, when I saw the religious stuff, I honestly thought, it was for protection or at least to ensure that, he would get the good side of the cube as opposed to, the bad side.
That's a good point. But he didn't understand the cube in the first place.
And it's just one of those things that, looking at different religious protections that might exist out there, as far as using a crucifix or holy water, things like that, or just the figures and figurines themselves, because the figurines that Julia finds, I just found hilarious. It was it's you've got all this religious stuff, and then you've got a little figurine, a little sex act figurine in there.
I mean, that could be religious too.
Well, it could be. It was just one of those things of the Judeo-Christian ones that were there.
Right.
So is he trying to hedge his bets as far as he's got the Judeo-Christian ones, he's got Eastern faiths, he's got, I was waiting for something from Yoruba or Western Africa, or even from South America as part of protections, because I mean this guy has traveled. I don't think Morocco, or at least the trip to Morocco, is his first venture overseas, but it seems as though he's done a little bit of research, but apparently he didn't do enough.
He's like Benny in The Mummy, where he's like trying to lift up all the different religious stuff to see which one will protect him.
Oh my gosh, that's a good reference. I was just watching that the other day. He was holding up and the one that saved him was the Star of David.
Right.
Because they were slaves to the Egyptians. So he's like, oh, Hebrew. I gotcha. Come here.
Maybe Frank should have got. I didn't see a Star of David.
Oh, that might have been it.
Frank fucked up.
You've solved the mystery.
I want to say this is so offhand from everything else, but just because we're on some visual stuff, I love everyone's hair in this movie. And I love Kirsty's like jacket outfit. She's so interesting to me as a character. We don't learn a whole lot about her like through dialogue stuff, mostly just her relationship with her dad. But like there's a lot about her because she seems like she's constantly kind of like curious or like in a good mood where she's just kind of fooling around and stuff. Like she's smiling and smirking. Like it's not the usual. I mean, I don't want to lump all final girls or anything together either, but like it's very different than what you normally see for that type of character.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I really enjoyed that about her. Like she goes at it by the end. Like just glare in her eyes.
One thing I really like about Kirsty is she didn't have to go through like a whole arc to find her strength. She was just like, I'm going to fucking try to protect my dad. I'm going to fucking stand up to your ass. Like, there was never a question about whether Kirsty could handle this shit. Like, when we first meet her, maybe, like, because we don't know her. But,
right,
like,
but she
never doubts herself.
Movers who are checking her out and stuff. Like, she doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's unfazed by a lot of this that's going on.
Well, even the whatever he is, the guy who's dressed as a homeless man and like, I don't know what to call him, but like even then, like she's just kind of like she's timid about it, but she's not gonna like run.
Right.
Like, she's there like ready, like what the fuck are you doing, Right.
She's like, you got to pay for those.
Yeah.
Or put those back.
Like, sir, you cannot have those crickets. But yeah,
spit them out. No.
Yeah, but it was because I mean she's such a young character but she's so independent already, right? Because even when her dad calls her and is like, "Oh, we want to show you the house," and he's like, "Oh, I got a room, I'm good." And it's not one of these things of I know the house that's free room and board or anything like that. It's like she is enjoying being on her own, and I mean, for several different reasons, because she doesn't like Julia, but she enjoys that independence. And I think having a character like her, and not, as you said, James, not having to have that full arc in her story to where she has to go through something that's very traumatic to where she can eventually find her strength or anything like that. I think it's great just getting these snippets of her interacting with other people to understand the kind of person she is. And even the kind of relationship that she has with Julia, her uncle Frank, and then her dad, to where you see how she would work, or at least how she would interact with them, in a normal scenario, or when things kind of fall apart, especially when she sees her dad and his skin looks a little weird.
Exactly. Like we get enough of her interactions early on to understand why she reacts the way she does when weird shit starts happening. Because Frank comes at her and she knees him. Mm-hmm. And then the moment she realizes that the box is important to him, like her body language changes. Is like, oh, you want this? And we're really jumping around now, but just like with the Cenobites later, like how often in one of these movies do we see the character like try to make a deal with the monster and then just the monsters consider it?
Right? Like you have to have a certain level of power for them to be like, well, yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
You know?
And I love this character.
Yeah, it just really struck me how she's empowered the entire time. And that's such a nice change.
I don't know where we jumped from. I know Julia, and finding out about Julia and Frank is probably an important point to touch on.
They had sex on her wedding dress. Like, holy shit. It's one thing to cheat on somebody, and it's another thing to fuck their brother right before your wedding. But to have sex on top of the wedding dress, that's just rude. And then to make some undying pledge, my God. Oh, well, tell me yours, Don.
Well, it's definitely it's like 12 steps, 15 steps before having sex on your wedding dress on your wedding day with your soon-to-be brother-in-law. But yeah, I think and this is nothing against 80s movies because I love them, but I think this is kind of that cool way of throwing us right into the absurdity of their relationship. Maybe there had been this sexual tension before. Maybe we don't know. Maybe she, I don't know. It was one of those things. If Frank wasn't available, so she took the brother, or she was, there was something there to gain, right? But Frank,
she seems pretty electrified just by his presence, even when he doesn't have skin.
Oh, and that's like the weird. My wife, I guess the part where he's still, he's, I guess, 3/4 of the way there. And she grabs, or he pushes his finger towards her mouth. And my wife is like, all right, this is going to make me throw up. I was like, what are you talking about? That's love, baby. That's love. It's like, he doesn't have any skin. It's like, but that's still him. That's still him. But yeah, the whole idea that she's quickly infatuated with him, I think is interesting because it gets you into this understanding of she loves him no matter what he looks like, especially even after he takes the skin of his brother. But she loves him, or is at least infatuated with him or consumed by him, to the point where she's willing to go out and kill people to bring him back, or at least bludgeon them and incapacitate them so he can then, take their blood and go forward, which, if it hadn't been for a simple accident in the house, no one would have known about, which is, when his brother is moving the furniture, moving the bed with the movers and cuts his hand on a nail and bleeds everywhere, which again, James has described himself as having that type of reaction when he cuts himself or hurts himself.
Yeah,
or at least when I send you photos of me cutting myself with
good Lord.
Yeah. That one knife that I dropped on my foot.
Oh yeah. No, is it weird that the thing that bothered me the most in this was the nail? Like,
no,
maybe
I'm the same.
Okay, good.
I can watch him get the hooks in his face and them tearing Steele's skin off and draining them and bludgeoning with the hammer. But that nail going into his hand is so small and real that that's the part I have to put my hand up so I can't see it.
I didn't watch it. I did not watch it. Like I joked earlier that I covered my eyes the whole time. I looked away at the nail. Maybe I still have PTSD from Ready or Not, but but I have a thing against nails. That's what I'm learning. And just the buildup where they kept showing it and kept showing it. And I was like, fuck you. No.
They were warning us. They were warning us.
And then
that's the part I can watch everything but that part.
Yeah, it's like the rest of it's like Saw for me. I can sit there and eat while I watch it. No big deal.
And then like that's like people I know there are people who can watch The Thing. No, like John Carpenter's The Thing, no problem, except when they're getting the needles in their skin for the blood scene.
Like I could see that.
Watch that needle going in.
Yeah, that doesn't bother me, but I could definitely see why it would bother people. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Same. It doesn't bother me either, but I get it, especially with this nail.
Yeah, and I think that you just explained to me why. It's the very real. This nail can happen to me. The odds of me being somewhere and all these chains coming out and ripping me up, not very good. Because I will yell, "No chains, cosmic leather daddy." So I'll be fine. But no, but yeah, the nail, that's something very likely to really happen to me. So
I'm just hoping he got a tetanus shot afterwards.
He didn't have time.
Well, they went to the hospital. I'm sure he did. I mean, not that it made any difference by the end of the movie.
You mentioned when Frank is wearing Larry's skin, and is this part supposed to be funny? Because I couldn't stop laughing every time they showed it. I'm like, how are you looking at him and you're not like, hey, what's wrong with your hairline?
I think she thought he was bloody from killing Frank, but I mean, Frank and Julia sure thought it was funny. Like, just their whole tone during that scene is just like, yeah, it's fine, Kirsty. We killed Frank. Wink.
He's gone. He's taken care of.
They're very convincing manipulators.
I mean, she'd just been through something too, because she really needed Frank to be alive for the Cenobites at that point.
Oh yeah, and it's one of those things where how are you going to convince? And that whole moment where she opens up the box by accident, or at least she opens up the box and gets to go into that world, or gets pulled into that world and then escapes. I thought was phenomenal because it showed that she wasn't trapped because she is able to run back into the hospital room. But then she does have that moment with the Cenobites themselves, and they're explaining like, hey, you did this, you called us. And honestly, I think if the three of us had been together, having watched this movie before, we probably would have pulled an MST3K thing, because it would have been like, yeah, like, you called them, it's your fault. Like, what the hell's your problem? Like, obviously you're wasting their time.
They do say that there's no time for argument. Like, yeah. They have things to do.
Like, this is the system that is set up. You've solved the puzzle. We're here. And now we need to fulfill our duties, right? But, that bargain that both of you mentioned earlier, as far as her saying like, oh, somebody got away from you. No one gets away from us. And I'm thinking like, you guys aren't really good accountants. Like, you really, you guys need to have an audit that's going on in your facilities if someone can easily get away and you don't know that he's gone.
They're busy counting their sex toys, okay? They can't count the people that they use them on, like, all the time.
Hey, which one of you was supposed to be watching Frank? Was that you, Chatterbox?
Man. I do feel like that kind of diminishes how scary they were to me, though. Because I was like, you're not very good at your job. And maybe that's just because I'm 43 and jaded after 30 years of watching horror now. Like, maybe it would have meant something. Well, I guess I hated it when I was a teenager. But maybe, like back then, it wouldn't have bothered me as much. But the whole, like, they didn't even know he was missing really, like, toned it down for me. Like, if they were aggressively like, where the fuck is he? You know?
Right.
I don't know.
That's what I was expecting.
I have an interpretation. But
yeah. All right.
The thing is, okay, so I don't know where other people see this, but I don't see them as demons from hell. Like, again, I'm ignoring the sequels. They explain themselves differently as explorers in the realm of experience. That's why I think that in some cases people are happy to see them. They're happy to essentially, go through something like what Frank goes through with them, because they actually are looking for that when they say, like, angels to some, demons to others.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we don't know how big, I mean, again, ignoring the sequels, we don't know how big the place, the places beyond the walls are. It's not clear if Kirsty opened the same place that the Cenobites came from when she encounters like the squealing baby sounding monster that chases her through the corridor.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So like they have so many, who knows how many people that they've drawn there. And it's, as far as they seem to be concerned, they are just introducing you to like, hey, here's this cool shit we figured out.
Right.
And you are supposed to do it because you got wrapped up in the box. So I don't think that they were like, where's Frank? Because they just hadn't gotten back around to him yet. Because where was he going to go? He didn't have the box. He was on, I mean, yeah, he did have the box when he came through, but as far as they knew, he didn't have any way out.
No, that makes sense, because I'm looking at them as monsters in a movie or villains like the usual, and they're not. And you're right. So yeah,
I don't think they see themselves as villains at all. I think they just see themselves as just like people engaged in curiosity. It's very extreme curiosity. It's like, I wonder, does this hurt? Does this hurt? But again, that's very like I haven't read the book. My wife was very nice and got it for me a couple years ago, and it's been on the shelf because of TBRs are gigantic. But like I just have a very like I'm fascinated by them. Like I just think they're such interesting characters. I wish there was a way to know more, but then whenever I go to look at more, it's always like, well, the devil, this, and I'm just like, I don't want to hear anything about that. I want to hear more about what my interpretation is.
And your interpretation is way more fascinating. There's so many demons, so many sent from hell, whatever, and even the title Hellraiser, like that immediately puts that in our minds, Right. So
right.
I look at the book was The Hellbound Heart, is that right?
Yeah.
And then they wouldn't let him use that, and so Clive wanted to call it Sadomasochist from Beyond the Grave. Like that takes out that whole demon part. Like Hellraiser makes it demony, right?
Right.
Like we're summoning these things from hell. And From Beyond the Grave is way more interesting. And I think it really goes more into what you've been talking about in your interpretation of they're just beyond our plane of existence or understanding at this point.
Right.
Especially because it doesn't seem like when you go with them that you can die. The blood brings Frank back to this side of things, but he doesn't seem dead when his pieces are on that altar, or when he crawls up out of the floor. Like you're still with them, regardless of what they do. At least it seems to me.
Mm-hmm. Well, because even when they took the pieces and they put them together, maybe it was just what I looked at, but it looked as though the face was still alive, or at least it was still
how I saw
moving.
It.
Mm-hmm. So for me, I was kind of like, well, if you're in the beyond or whatever this would be, it would make sense that you're not dead, because if this is supposed to be a place of immortality or perpetual life or whatever, you can feel the pain or feel the pleasure without actually succumbing and dying from it, or dying from your exposure to whatever you're exposed to. Which was fun when Frank does come back, because his whole explanation of, or at least trying to explain what had taken place and where he had been. I don't care what type of pledge I've made with somebody. If I suddenly see like a corpse version of them, and they're trying to tell me like, hey, this is what happened. I'm like, no, I've seen enough zombie movies. No.
Interesting with the pleasure and pain, because like I'm like the way things go with it, I don't think the Cenobites can tell the difference.
Right. Some people find their pleasure through pain. So
right.
It becomes that issue of our definition of what it is. So are we talking about pleasure and pain together, or are we talking about pleasure and pain separate?
Yeah, and especially on the scale of like immortality, like what difference does it make as far as they're concerned?
Mm-hmm. I mean, some people get a rush from, there are boxers who enjoy getting hit in the face, or people who enjoy, going into war zones, or at least being involved in some type of conflict or fight because it makes them feel alive. Or jumping out of a plane. They like to do things that other people would look at and say, like, I don't get it. But
so wind up being torn apart by hooks.
Right. I've seen some of those magic shows where they hold people up by the hooks, and I look at them like, there's no way. Not for me. No, thank you, Chris Angel, or whoever does that still.
All the hell stuff is just like the heaven stuff. It's all brought by Frank. Like, because we're experiencing a lot of this bent by Frank's perspective. Like he's the one bringing the religious effigies. He's the one who talks about heaven and hell. He's the one who says Jesus wept at the end.
Right.
Like no one else is bringing that here. And it's just like, Frank, what is your deal?
Frank holds on to Jesus. So there's that part of me that believes that Frank the rest of the time is, well, I'm a Christian and I do this, even though he's into all this like rape and just being overly aggressive with everybody and doing the direct opposite of the supposed message. It's just that bullshit of using this as a shield to protect your image from everybody.
Yes,
and I thought that was so fucking well done. And it's this huge piece of Frank to the point that he talks about it all the time and he's surrounded by it. And then he's doing just horrible, horrible shit. And that really struck me. Because then you see like the good people in the film and they don't even mention it. And I don't know that this was purposeful, but this is something I really identified with, because it's one of my pet peeves in life. So I just thought that was really interesting that the more you look at people, the more that, religion isn't religion in this film at all.
Mm.
Well, I like that you use the word inversion because that kind of takes it back to when we earlier in us talking about this with different perspective from different storytellers with Clive Barker being gay and what the message about that was at the time, like prevalently. Even to this day, look at Lil Nas X and the Montero video. And he inverted stuff with that, and it had an enormous backlash. And that's how many years later? 30-something years later?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, and I think just if you're on the side of that, like Clive Barker is, like Lil Nas X, like I am, where you're being told because you're like this, then hell awaits or whatever. It's like you're going to have that inverted worldview about this stuff when you're, especially at least when you're creating this stuff. Like I have to like, it's funny to me not to bring it to my stuff. I'll be quick with this, but with some of my stories, people immediately interpret some of the antagonistic forces to be demons. And I'm always just like, okay, you're assuming demon, hell, Lucifer, angel rebellion, God, Jesus, all from this one creature. Like that, like I don't take any of that stuff for granted. So like if I'm putting a hell demon in my story, it's going to be very overt, but I'm just like, cause I don't even have that worldview like that.
Right.
Like it just, the kind of message that goes out, like you were saying, James, like it does not communicate because of how it's been wielded as a weapon for so long. And I see that in the Montero video. I see it here.
I just want to say you can push your stories all you want. That's
I was going to say, take as much time as you need.
No, but I agree with all of that, and you said it way better than I did, so thank you. I don't know. There's something about Frank that just really resonated with me because of that, so I just wanted to touch on that. What were you going to say, Don?
Oh, no, I was going to ask, because this was my problem with Frank. What was his end game?
I don't think he had one.
He doesn't seem like a guy with a plan. No.
No, and that was the problem I had with him. Like, you have this box, right? You were searching it out. You have all these religious artifacts, religious pieces, religious images themselves, right? Obviously, you were looking for something. So, were you upset?
Oh, I misunderstood. I think he did have an end game.
But I mean, as far as like, what exactly would it have been? And because I don't ever remember him fully expressing like, hey, this is why I was fucking around with this box and this is why I had to get it. You know, am I looking for eternal life? Am I looking for rich, something that's out there?
He wanted pleasures, but.
Oh, no, but I mean, it's that. But I'm like, what pleasure? Because, even asking earlier, it's like, well, we have different definitions for pleasure and pain, or even the definitions that are given. Can we argue that they're together? Or is he is he searching out pleasures beyond this world, within this world? Or even then, what is his definition of pleasure? Because it seems like sex isn't doing it for him. Because it seems he doesn't seem to be having a problem getting sexual gratification.
No.
So it can't be that, even though, we see so much of it, with the figurines, with the pictures, with the flashbacks, things like that. But my question is just kind of like, what exactly does it look like for him?
I think he expected to get some kind of paradise out of it. I think this was kind of like his I'm done with everything. He just had no idea what he was messing with.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And it's so stupid because if you look at that box looks like bad news.
Right.
Yeah, nothing about it looks good. Thing. No. My take on it is that Frank no longer is the one with power, and people like Frank always want to be in control and want to be abusing others. Okay. And I feel like maybe that wasn't happening in the other realm, and that's why he's so desperate to get out of there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, they weren't going to make him a Cenobite.
Right? Yeah.
Because that's the moment they did this, he wasn't like, oh, yeah, this is great. Like, put more hooks in me. This isn't enough. He was just like, no, please. And they were just like, well, no.
Sorry.
I mean, they seem very, the Cenobites are clearly have a structure. They do have a way, like, not to pull it. I mean, yeah, let's go there. Like they establish the rules, like in a BDSM type of situation. These are but they are the ones in control. They are the ones who have the say no matter what. And as far as they're concerned, you play with the puzzle box, you're consenting to that.
Right.
And they have, you see it through there as far as you opened it, we can make a deal. That's fine. I think at the end, they're telling Kirsty, we want the man who did this. And she obviously doesn't know about the switch of who's got her dad's skin at that point. But once Frank does the really, foolish thing he shouldn't have done, where he's like, I'm Uncle Frank, I'm Frank, in the room, and they come for him. Pinhead says to Kirsty, this is not for your eyes. Mm-hmm. And she watches the entire time up till the point where the chains pull Frank apart. And then they come after her and Pinhead says, we have such sights to show you. I didn't pick up on this before this viewing. My wife had noticed this. It kind of felt, it was kind of like he was establishing a rule there. And we both thought if Kirsty had turned away or covered her eyes or closed her eyes when he said, this is not for your eyes, they wouldn't have messed with her anymore. But it's like, oh, you want to see some fucked up shit? All right, we'll show you some fucked up shit.
My question is this, because there is the BDSM that you can definitely argue with this. Were any safe words involved? I mean, or is that something that's answered in the 9 sequels that follow this movie?
The sequels are all like, oh, it's hell, and they're demons, and that's why I ignore them, because I just and I say that when I've only seen the first two, and I do think the second one is a good movie, but it kind of ruins the first one for me, and that's why even then I kind of ignore it. I have to look at it as like this separate thing because it just doesn't interest me. I just think that's boring. I mean, not to knock it for anyone else, but like that's just personally, that's me.
Yeah, you were looking for something else with it, as opposed to
right.
Not to say that hell's a simple answer, but you want something different.
Right, and I'm just like, because that feels like the easy way to go, and I'm sure that's what the studios and such had in mind. And again, I do think the second one's a good movie. I do think they do interesting things, but it's not as interesting as what I really wanted to explore with this. And I don't think any of the comics or sequels really touch on that, because you'll have them essentially being like, yeah, like the third one is like Hellraiser 3 Hell on Earth. Like it is just demon shit, and it doesn't. I mean, I think the third one explores some things. I haven't watched it, but I don't. Yeah, I mean, I'm probably way off in a lot of ways from this stuff, but like I would love to know, is there a safe word? Is there something where it's like you say this word and they're just like, oh, okay, no
We're
more
going to send you back to Earth.
Right.
Would that be a satisfying ending to the movie for you guys or not? Because I would find it funny. So like on some level, I would kind of like it. But like not overall, like would that really bother you?
No, but if you said the word, would it be like Pee-wee's Playhouse where all the Cenobites gather around? They're like,
now you've gone
wait a second. Ah! He said tomato.
In a sequel, I would love to see that explored. I love this movie exactly as it is. Like the only part that I could bitch about is when you can tell the budget ran out for the house burning down.
Yeah. I don't know.
But even then, that's fine. Like you get what's going on. So
right.
Even like. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
As long as the movie can communicate what it's doing, then who cares as far as whether they actually burn down a house or not, or a model or just a photograph.
But even like the special effects like really pulled me out. But I was also like, I don't want anybody to go back and improve them. Like, right. There's something that I enjoy.
Special edition by George Lucas.
Yeah, exactly. Suddenly like Jabba the Hutt's like, half his size and walking around. But anyway, no, there's something that I personally really enjoy about the special effects of a time. And I don't need everything to be super realistic, but I thought it was weird how like the practical effects in this were like phenomenal for the time. And then, like the little like lightning stuff across the box just looked terrible, but I like that. So I don't want anybody to fix it either.
I love 80s lightning nonsense, like in Ghostbusters and in this movie. Yeah. Like there's just something magical about it to me.
Absolutely. So yeah, no safe word with the special effects people. Just keep going. But the end you were talking about with the house burning and everything, and then you see the homeless guy just like walking up, just staring them down. It's such a weird moment, like I don't know. There's there was part of me, I'd forgotten why he was there, right? Because like I said, I hadn't seen this in, I don't know, how old am I? Like 65 years. So, like I was like, what the fuck is going on here? And then, it happens and he gets the box and transforms and everything. And I thought that was kind of cool. But I almost wish that he would have shown up several more times to like kind of give you the hint, like either that he was watching more or that like, maybe he's a threat or whatever. I don't know. Did it work for you guys that he's only there the few times that he is?
I think keeping him there at least just a couple of times, with the cricket scene and of course with at the end, and I think there was one other part that he was in.
Yeah, when when she's kissing Steve.
Yeah. and just keeping it. I think it was good enough to kind of make you question while you're watching the film, like what's up with this guy. You know,
this might be on me because I don't remember him there during the kissing scene. So maybe I was like looking away or something.
He was just like staring at.
Yeah.
I'm very scared of people kissing, so I look away. No. All right. No, that's more times. So maybe that feels better to me. Like it was kind of weird to me, and I don't know. But apparently it was me.
Home Depot Halloween decorations, so that was the first thing I thought when I saw it. I was like, holy crap, that's the thing that they sell at Home Depot every Halloween season, the yard dragon.
That's pretty amazing.
And it was nothing against them as far as the effects and anything. That was the first thing that came to mind. But I thought it was a cool thing for him to turn into. Yeah. Because then it makes you question, okay, are these demons? Are these just, is this an alternate reality? Is this, somewhere, in between our world and another? Like, what exactly is going on? So, I mean, it has a moment where it makes you question what reality is and how these people are affected by it, or by the participation in it.
Yeah, and that's really where it affected me most. I think is just this idea that it's just like the world that we take for granted doesn't have solid rules. It's not a solid thing. Like there are worlds behind the walls. And just got to deal with it. This has probably one of my favorite film scores ever. Christopher Young doing the score for this. It's so like seductive at times and bombastic at others, and every piece of it feels just like this beautiful thing. And it's funny because so much stuff was synthesizer, which I love at the time, but this really stands out as a really majestic score. I don't have anywhere to go with that, just except that it's just one of my favorites ever.
Well, no, that's an important thing to bring up because there's some horror movies that are they can be made or broken based off of their score and based off the soundscape, whereas this one, I think it helped carry it because, in all honesty, there's some scenes that if they were silent, I think it would have been worse. And there's some movies where the silence works, like the nail scene. If that had been completely silent and it didn't have the extra, the tension of seeing the nail and then the tension of the score itself and the soundscape driving it, it could have taken a little away. And we've talked about this on other episodes where the soundtrack or the score that's being used, especially given the amount of years that separate us from when we viewed it and the time in which it was made, completely throws the movie off. Like Last House on the Left, I think we talked about on the episode where there's like just brutal stuff happening and then there's like this upbeat music that starts playing, and it really just throws you out of the mood of or just a sense of the horror that's taking place there.
No, this is a good score. I believe I read something that the original score was turned down and they redid it. I don't have any idea what it would have been like or anything, but if that's true, they made a really good choice here.
Oh, so. Yeah, definitely. I never heard that before. That's interesting.
It's always hard when randomly reading internet articles going into this, so because then I'm always like, all right, is this clickbait? Is this real? I don't know. So what I'm saying is that might be true.
Yeah. I'm glad. Yeah, if that is the case, then they lucked out because it's so beautiful. And like, there's like parts that sound like a music box winding up. Right. There's parts that are waltzes, and it's just like, when do you get that in a horror movie? Besides this, obviously.
Yeah, and I think that it really hits, like the score really works with each character as well, like the different places that they're each at in their stories. And I feel like that's something that some scores totally miss. I'm in no way an expert on this, so I'm not explaining this correctly, probably.
Me neither.
But like, it really worked to bring out the emotion of each character. I feel like some scores are like thrown together with like no concept of the script, and some are like all built around like one person. And this one just really felt like it really pulled each person's story forward.
It was like an extra character.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there you go. That's everything I know about music. Jeff Whitmire is like rubbing his head right now and threatening me on Twitter when he hears this. Did you guys notice the flowers throughout? Like the stained glass windows and different stuff like that?
Notice, yes. Paid attention to, no.
Yeah,
So-
I didn't mark them. I don't know much about flowers, so like I saw them and there was like, there are some flowers.
Because I have no idea if this means anything. But, you know, like, so like when they show Frank, there's always like open flowers and like fully bloomed. And then like when Larry and Julia walk in, they're like closed buds. And I was like, is this related to like sexual experience level, or is it like, you know, their openness to do something? I don't know. I don't really have anywhere I was going with it so much as I wanted to know what you two thought. But
there was that TV where Kirsty was in the hotel in the hospital room. The television was
a terrible hotel.
That is a terrible.
No, you're right. I forgot about that. No, you're right. Oh crap! I have to watch it again now and pay attention to the flowers, because you're right. And there's like they show a flower blooming after the blood goes into the cracks. For Frank to come back. Shit. Oh, I didn't even think about this stuff. I didn't even notice.
I've ruined everybody's lives today. So my work here is done. So. All right. So that wraps up my notes. And I think you guys feel the same because, you know, this part that I edited that no one else gets to hear. Anyway, so we're going to jump into movie recommendations. So we started a thing, I think since you were last here, Hailey, but I'm not sure, where we just kind of throw out some films that other people might enjoy if they liked this. And we always let other people go first because Don has 50 of them.
51 this week.
51. Wow.
No, I'm just kidding.
We're gonna try to knock off 3 of those. So Hailey, would you like to go first?
I don't know. I wasn't prepared as much for that. You could watch Hellraiser 2 if you don't care for my interpretation of events in this movie. Because I think Hellraiser 2 is still a good movie. Maybe you can edge towards the third one from what I've heard. You don't need to watch the other 8 as far as what I've heard after that. So that's one. I kind of view this in a way just because of how I see it as kind of cosmic a little bit. So I would also recommend In the Mouth of Madness.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
I think I'm good there. I'm gonna end that on a high note.
Cool. My big ones don't directly play into this, but it's just kind of like the same feeling I get watching it. So I'm going with 2 films that we've covered, Candyman and The Lost Boys.
Oh,
because both of these kind of give me that same feeling. Like The Lost Boys, I know they're not the same as the Cenobites by any means, but they just kind of give me that same feel, you know,
right.
like,
yeah,
they're not necessarily evil. They're just doing their thing. And sometimes there's consequences for that. So, and The Lost Boys also give you a lot of room to get the fuck out of there. And if you stick around, that's kind of on you. So I just feel like that goes along with this. All right, Don, what are your 35 movies you have left?
All right.
I don't do math.
You took Candyman from me. So
Candyman.
I would say The Gate is as far as unlocking shit that you shouldn't be unlocking.
Oh, yeah.
Let's see. I've got Fright Night, Reanimator. I mean, kind of played by the same rules as far as movies that not necessarily just like this film, but kind of in that same vein or give you the same feeling. Return of the Living Dead, because that was my first thought when Frank showed up was one of the zombies in that film. Children of the Corn, Insidious, or I should say any of the Insidious movies. Poltergeist. James is going to like this next one. Society.
Oh yeah, love Society.
And House. Which I believe about half this list we've talked about. So.
Oh, you know, speaking of House, when the homeless man becomes the dragon thing, I was like, literally my reaction was, is that the skeleton thing that flies around in House? And then I've decided that House is part of the Hellraiser franchise now because everything else is. So why not? Actually, we haven't hit that. We kind of talked about it beforehand. But Hailey, do you want to talk at all about why they keep making Hellraiser movies?
Sure. It's of course for money, in the sense that if they didn't make a Hellraiser movie every few years, then the rights would revert to Clive Barker. So they had to keep making them. But eventually, I mean, I think the last one was the script was so bad that Doug Bradley, who plays Pinhead, refused to come back. And now thankfully the rights have reverted to Clive Barker. So he wrote the book. He wrote the script for this. He directed this movie. I think it was his directorial debut. So he can do whatever he wants with it going forward. We'll see how it goes. I heard he was trying to remake it, but I've also heard about there possibly being an HBO series. So we'll see.
That might be interesting. A series.
Yeah, I heard about the series.
I think I might dig that more because you could really kind of get into different people and just where their lines are, and like my line with the box would be nowhere near somebody else's, so like anybody else's ever.
Yeah. See, I don't think there's much value in I say this as somebody because I love this movie so much, but I just don't see much value in remaking it. But I do see value in kind of adapting things into a series because it would be different. So
yeah,
we'll
HBO
see.
has a really good track record with series. So.
And their whole we have to have blood, we have to have sex. Well, this is a perfect property for them.
Oh yeah, no, they would do a great job with this. So let's hope that happens.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess that brings it back to you, Hailey. Do you want to tell everybody where they can find your new book and buy it and follow you on social media and all that good stuff?
Sure. Unfortunate Elements of My Anatomy will be on, I believe it's up for it's up for pre-order, or well, by the time this is out, it'll be out. It's up on Amazon in ebook and paperback, and the paperback should soon, if not already by the time this goes up, be out by on Barnes and Noble and Bookshop and wherever books are sold. And later this year, I'll have my first novel will be coming out, Queen of Teeth. And then I have another novel coming out from Off Limits Press, who published the Worm and His Kings. That'll be coming out next year, A Light Most Hateful.
Oh, nice.
Awesome.
And you can find me at www.haileypiper.com. On Twitter, I'm at Hailey Piper Says, and on Instagram, I'm at Hailey Piper Fights.
And we'll bring you back for Hellraiser month, where we watch all 30 movies.
God.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I wouldn't subject anyone to that.
Well, we're going to make a couple during that month too. So we're going to make the roller derby version.
Well, I guess I'll have to watch that.
Awesome. All right, so that wraps it up for this week. As always, I am James Sabata.
And I am still Don Gil, unless we change skin. I mean.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my. And we'll see you next week here at thenecronomid.com.